just as a refresher, basically what we were talking about on that show was the volatility surrounding Pandora because of the impending Copyright Royalty Board decision and on webcasting IV and the large impact that would have on the company's cost structure.
And if memory serves, this is a big deal for Pandora.
Huge deal. And in the, probably 2 months or so leading up to mid-December, there had been some pretty wild price swings on the stock, and a lot of it was related to, at first, CRB admitting that the agreement that Pandora had with Merlin, which is an independent label representative body, would be an admissible benchmark for the negotiations with SoundExchange, SoundExchange being kind of a more major label representative. So that was one major thing that's kind of moved things around. And then secondly, there was also a comment from the CRB that there wouldn't be any distinction between indie labels and major labels in terms of, the ability to collect higher royalty rates on songs. So, there was no strength position there for SoundExchange to be coming from. So because of these two things, it seemed going into mid-December when we were expecting the CRB decision that things would be kind of playing out in a more favorable way for Pandora. As it turns out, that's what happened.
Yay.
Yeah.
It was entirely speculative at the time, though.
Entirely speculative. Yeah. So a lot of people started kind of like, reading the tarot cards and saying, this looks like how it's moving. But there was always the possibility that, there were going to be disappointing results. And I think that's why you saw so much volatility with the stock in the lead up to this. And so earlier this week, CRB released its official ruling on royalty rates for WebIV. Ad-supported free streams will cost Pandora $0.0017. So that is 17% of a cent. Yes. And subscription...
It's not quite 1/5 of a penny. There.
Yes. Subscription streams will cost 0.0022.
Okay, so that's a fifth of a penny.
A fifth of a penny, just about. And so...
and this is going, of course, to the labels for the layman.
Yes.
Okay.
It's going to SoundExchange to distribute to the labels.
Okay,
2015 rates, so what they were operating under for current cost structure, had Pandora paying 0.0014 and 0.0025 respectively.
We're sorry, folks. We're not used to this many decimal places.
Yeah, it's a lot to get through. They usually state these as 100 play metrics, which probably would have been smarter for the show. But so on the surface, this looks kind of disappointing, right? So you look at it and you're like, okay, these ad-supported free streams are going to cost more. The subscription streams will be costing less.
Right.
Maybe it's a wash altogether. Right. But, you saw the stock move, I think, 10 to 15%.
To the upside.
To the upside this week. So, obviously, favorable market reaction. And I think that really gets into what the bear side of this negotiation could have looked like. Really, I think anything that came in at less than a fifth of a penny per play was going to be good for Pandora. And that's what, on the free side. And so that's why analysts in the market had this really, favorable reaction. One of the interesting aspects of this, and I know that you had a particularly interesting take on it, was just the 17 hundredths of a cent rate on non-subscription plays being tied to inflation, and that being the escalator year to year.
Why? How did they pick that?
I don't know.
The Consumer Price Index is what the federal government uses to figure out people's Social Security checks every year. The increase, and
like COLA.
It's
for
dumb.
Raises.
Janet Yellen talks about it when she's talking about her inflation targets.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Tech actually usually experiences deflation. Computers get cheaper. Software gets cheaper. This stuff gets...
talent gets more expensive. Talent gets more expensive.
Well, fine. It seems like they picked that in the absence of any other better option.
Yeah, but it plays out extremely well for Pandora. If you look, basically the escalation of their costs, so if you're tying it to CPI, let's say inflation looks like it might be 1.5%, 2%,
no.
Maybe. In a rising interest rate environment, it's probably less, you know? So that's what you'd anticipate their ad-supported streams will go up by year over year. They were looking at...
So we got tons of clarity here.
Yeah.
Oodles of clarity.
And they were experiencing year-over-year royalty increases of like 9% prior to this. So this adds a lot of... It's kind of a much smoother cost structure for them.
Right.
Which is great. And... it's a much more favorable reaction. If you look at what Sound Exchange was hoping for in terms of royalty rates, they were looking for about a quarter of a penny.
Oh, so they were 40% off the mark?
Yeah.
Just ballparking? Yeah.
So, and of course, Sound Exchange was not pleased. They released a comment that said this will erode the value of music in our economy.
I almost wonder if the regulators, I mean, who made the decision?
Copyright royalty.
Okay, those guys.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if they looked at, because they probably want to engender competition and they want to make this work. And I almost wonder if they're like, okay, what does Pandora need to not die?
Yeah, I think that's an element of it. The online internet radio business leans on like the kind of the terrestrial radio model.
Right.
Like the royalty rate agreements are slightly different than what you have for the on-demand business, and it will be interesting to see how this plays out for Pandora's rumored on-demand service via the RDO acquisition.
Yeah.
That's something that it's tough because they had this really great ruling here, but then they're going to have to go back to those same labels without the CRB.
Hi, guys.
And say, hey guys, like we have this really awesome royalty rate agreement now. So what do you want to do on an on-demand basis? So that's certainly something to watch. I think rumors have that possibly being selling in late 2016.
Wow.
That comes out. So I mean, they have to set up the entire infrastructure for that.
Right.
They didn't acquire any of the label agreements when they acquired RDO, so it's a little bit tougher. I don't know that we'll see. I don't know we'll see an on-demand streaming option from them anytime soon.